Hey, everybody, and welcome to Global Atheists. Thanks so much for hanging out with us for a little bit. Today we're going to be talking about cults, and more specifically, like online cults from today. More recent type stuff, right? Not like the old, the old boring cults where you had to go to a compound and everything. No, no, no. We're doing the online stuff where they find each other a lot more easily, and so it kind of makes it that much more frightening in a lot of ways. So we're going to get into it. So. We got some other people here with me, and we're gonna be talking about that. So, want to introduce I want to introduce our other hosts. So we got. So I want to bring in some of our other hosts. We've got a couple people here we gonna hang out with. We got Paul. How we doing, Paul?
Yeah, good evening. Thanks very much for inviting me again onto the show. Hopefully this one's going to be a good one. Should be an interesting one anyway.
Oh yeah, definitely. And we got Apostate Ann. How we doing?
Hey guys.
Hey.
Well, we had the 4th of July celebration yesterday, so I think it's appropriate that we're talking about, you have freedom to choose what you want, but is that really what happens when you are choosing the wrong organizations, and how does that impact everyone around you?
Right. Yeah, that's a good that's a good point, right? Freedom to choose all that stuff isn't always a good thing. No, I'm just kidding. Like, it's always a good thing, but we need to be able to we need people to be choosing the right stuff, right? Like
exactly.
And I think us in the UK, I think we should celebrate the 4th of July, because I think we we dodged a curveball there by letting you go.
Oh, that's true. That's not across the world.
All right. Yeah, that's an us thing.
Yeah, so I thought it was important, before getting into talking about this new movement of online cults, to talk about really more define what a cult is and what are some aspects of a cult. So I think it's important to make that distinction, because I think a lot of people in religion, I know when I was religious, I'm like, well, my religion is true, all those other ones are cults. So, it's good to understand what does it look like. So I wanted to look at what the expert has to say. And Dr. Janja Lalich, she's considered the world-renowned expert in cults. So she is a professor emerita of sociology and an international authority on cults, extremism, and coercion. And so these are sort of her insights. And one thing I thought was really interesting, I want to hear what you guys think about this, is she said it has nothing to do with religion. It's only about behavior, group behavior. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I think traditionally, before the internet and like social media, YouTube, and that sort of thing, that's what we would class as a cult. It would always be a religious type cult. But I tend to agree that now that we've moved into the digital age, and it's so easy for people to form their own groups where they couldn't do so much years ago, I think that's why it comes into this, that these become more cults, or becoming as part of the cult thing, and not just religions.
Yeah, it is interesting to think that it's because every time you think of a cult, you always think of like religious ones, right? Yes. Like, but I mean, it does make sense though. I mean, except there are some like alien ones and stuff too. So you're like, that's not really religious. So it does make sense though that it would just be the behavior and not in the brainwashing, right? I think
exactly.
religion's just brainwashing we're familiar with. It's like the easiest one to use, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. And I think once you're analyzing the aspects of what makes religion a cult, then you can see the same patterns or characteristics in the other systems or groups of beliefs. So that's what Dr. Janja Lalich boils down to. So one important thing, I think, Brent Lee, you were kind of speaking to this, like freedom of choice is great, but you want to make the right choices. And I think it starts at misinformation is when you start making some dangerous potentially choices. And so like we've seen sort of with the anti-vax movement, there's just some misinformation, the government's going to want to track you, and it's sort of those misinformation comes to mind.
Yeah.
Pizzagate was another one. You have people storming the basement of this pizza place because they think there's child trafficking going on, and it's just like rumors being fueled.
Yeah, that's scary. That's crazy. Jeez.
Exactly. And so it was harder to mobilize these ideas and these groups before the internet, but now that we have the internet, it's just so easy to spread these ideas, and it's one way. Like you don't have the rebuttal if it's like a quick video or a TikTok or a group leader sharing something.
Yeah, I suppose in the past to start a cult or for a cult to get going, it was word of mouth. I would speak to I'm starting a cult, so I'm speaking to my friend agrees with me, and then we speak to some more of our friends, and it spreads that way. So it's going to be very slow growing, isn't it? Whereas, like I said, because we have the internet, especially because we've got social media, you can literally link up with thousands, millions of people across the globe in seconds to try get onto the internet, onto YouTube. You're around the world in seconds, whereas obviously years ago it was just like your small town or your city, and then it'd have to expand that way. So much more difficult, I suppose, in the past for a cult to get growing. But now they could probably grow several per day.
I remember too, like I was watching this thing about Timothy McVeigh, and one of the things they would do, they would have little flyers, and they would pass them out at gun shows, and it would all be these conspiracies. It's just like 4chan and stuff like that, like what we say, but it was all on like actual paper, So, but that's the way they had to do it back then. But it's crazy.
And they were going to places to find the like-minded communities, but now online you've got a whole algorithm that does it for you. All you have to do is click down one step in that rabbit hole, and then you start getting all the suggestions for all the other rabbit hole ideas that support that.
Yeah, and YouTube even had to like kind of revamp their algorithm, because they had it for a while where it would lead you to more and more intense, like more and more obscure kind of like stuff, like crazier, and now they got it where it's directing you more towards mainstream type stuff, because they could see just how much damage they did when they were leading all these people to all of these dangerous conclusions through all these conspiracies and stuff. Yeah, they had to like revamp it.
Yeah, but the only downside from that is that's fueled the cults to say, look, they are trying to suppress us. They are trying to control what we think. It's them that are doing the controlling, not us. You can see that because we're getting shut down on YouTube, on internet, on Facebook. Yeah, so it sort of fuels the people that are in the cult, or the people that are about to get into a cult. It fuels their belief that what they've been told is right, because it's to them. It's happening to them. They've been shut down, and So it is a bit of a double-edged sword, I suppose. Hopefully, it's reducing the amount of people on a daily basis that are coming across these groups, but that the people are already in, it's reinforcing their belief, unfortunately.
Right.
And we've seen how easy it is to sway human beings. It's so too easy. And so before we get into how the 4 characteristics that Dr. Lalich defines these cults by, I wanted to just share something I learned about the brain and how humans are in general. So I learned about sort of the science or psychology of buying into something. So changing your behavior, essentially. And the key is to engage the most areas of the brain. The more connections you make, the more likely you are to drive behavior change. So if you've got the front of your brain that's more into the physical visual, okay, so like Brent Lee, you mentioned those flyers. You're seeing the flyers, you're meeting the people, this touching the physical part of your brain.
Right.
Then you've got the part of the brain that engages the imaginary. Remember a time when you were a kid. Imagine heaven and how wonderful it's going to be. It's engaging that part of your brain. And then also the emotion, like you're going to be forgiven and peace and healing. And when you're engaging all those parts of the brain, like you are driving change. So I just wanted to throw it out there, just how powerful this is and why.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. That's
And
great.
so, okay, so first thing she said is that these cults are defined by having a transcendent belief system. So as you talked about, like new ideas and a new reality, like these are our moral codes. This is the rules that we follow. So anytime you have a change of what is right and wrong and these authority figures, that's a typical characteristic of a cult.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And then there's some kind of system of control is the second aspect. Told, for example, told where to live, what to wear, what to eat, and all of it's an attempt to strip your individuality. Like, here's how you're expected to act to be like one of us. So those are slowly having a control in how you live, your autonomy.
Right. You set aside your agency kind of a thing, right? Like yeah.
Exactly. We see that so much in Christianity, for example, like, you know, women have to wear long skirts or else you're considered immoral and you should behave in this certain way. And so it's just like that's considered a good girl or a good woman, and otherwise it's a bad one. So that's setting up this whole system.
Right. Huh. That's
Can y'all
wild.
think of any other examples?
I was just thinking, what would make that different from society? Because I suppose society, in a certain level, does the same thing as well, doesn't it? It gives us dress codes for certain venues that you go into. So I suppose in a certain way, we do that anyway, don't we? Does it have to get to a certain level for it to become cultish?
I think you bring up a good point. And so I think that's one. I think having all four of these is part of it, and it can show you how easily like these can be in the safe zone and how easily it can get out of whack.
Right.
But then also, I think it challenges our ideas. Like maybe we do kind of act cult-like in certain aspects.
Oh yeah. And it's all matters of degree too, right? Like there's, like what's acceptable in society is going to be one thing on one level, and what's what's acceptable within the cult is going to be something I think that would be more extreme, right? Like it would take you out of what's normal for society and kind of limit that pool of what's acceptable, right?
That's a great point. Like that's kind of how they do their control, is kind of taking you away from the norm or what's the culture.
Yeah, and probably like not vilifying, but like being like the culture is what's absurd. We're the normal ones, okay? They're all crazy, or something like that. Like try to get you to disassociate from that sort of stuff.
So that leads to the third characteristic of a system of influence. So what you just described is sort of a manipulation of social pressure. Like, well, that's how they act. Do you want to be like them? You know, that kind of thing.
Right.
And even the slogans, the propaganda, I think we can all think about certain movements and the symbols they have or certain things that they wear that identifies them. And even Dr. Lalich was mentioning chanting, like as a group, having that group chant, it's fuels your emotion. And we talked about how important it is to engage that part of your brain. And if you're the one not chanting, you're the one left out. You're the one looking weird.
Right.
If you're not doing that. And then the last characteristic is to have a charismatic leader. So usually there's this like idea of an imbalance of power. You're putting them on a pedestal, and whatever that leader believes or supernatural qualities are kind of attributed to that person. So those are the four characteristics that make a cult. And so part of the transcendent belief system is this idea that they believe they're doing a good thing, but that's sort of the whole re-socialization process, is because they're changing what's moral or letting the leader define what's moral. Then their idea of what's good changes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big one. If you can get somebody to break down what they think is good and what is right and what is wrong. I mean, that's where it's so interesting because I always encounter this with like fundamentalists and stuff. And so often they'll be like, oh, if you don't believe that the Bible or whatever the moral thing they're talking about, but usually it's the Bible in this instance. Like, if you don't believe that that is like how you get right and wrong, then you are saying that you are a God and you're acting like a God yourself. And it's because they've basically removed their agency and their ability to determine what is right and what is wrong, and kind of equivocate that like right and wrong for loyalty to what their group says is right and wrong, right?
So well said.
It's like weird how it works like that. Like, you're being a God. It's like, dude, you get to decide what is right and wrong too, man. Like, then you're a God, man. Like, you decided your stuff too. You just are forgetting that for some reason, which is kind of weird.
They're demonizing thinking for yourself and equating that to you thinking that you're better or no more than a God.
Yeah, that's so freaky. That creeps me out, man.
Well, with the God that's normally presented to me, I'd say I do know more than that God. So I'd have to agree with him.
Right. That's a good point.
You know better than that God not to enslave people.
I don't need a book to tell me that. I don't need a book to tell me not to kill somebody. I don't need a book to tell me not to rape somebody. It's funny, I just never had to have a book to learn that. But then what they'll say then is that's written on your heart. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't win, can you?
But meanwhile, we know of people who will kill for their religious beliefs, and that's supposed to be, their moral compass is at least do not kill, and yet it drives them to kill because they turn that into it's good because I'm fighting the bad.
Right. Yeah. It's like, as long as it's like as long as they subjectively interpret their God to want them to harm, then harm all of a sudden is part of the moral bag, right?
Yeah, it's part of the right thing to do if it's commanded by God, isn't it? I mean, that's the thing when we don't want to go off onto the morality plan, I suppose.
I know, sorry, that's my whole I talk about this all the time.
Oh, that's your main bag, is it?
Yeah,
but, when it comes to morality, if you believe in a God and you think that morality comes from a God, then no matter what that God says is good. So if God tells me to go kill my next door neighbor, it's a good thing to do because God told me to do it.
Right. Yeah. That's freaky too.
So right and wrong is purely and utterly what God says. It's got nothing to do with what I think. I don't need to think about it. Right. And that's the scary thing, especially if we're getting into when it comes to cults, that if these leaders of religious cults can influence the followers, that they're getting the message from God, and then they send you out to do harm to other people. These people are going to do it, and we've seen that in the past. I've forgotten what the cult was that he sent somebody out into some, was it an actress's house who was quite heavily pregnant, and they killed her and everybody in the house. I can't remember that. It's a famous one.
Charles Manson, is that the one you're?
Yes, Charles Manson. Yeah, the swastika on it. Yeah, Charles Manson.
That was freaky.
Absolutely freaky. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and that did, and it was because they attributed to, like, they treated him almost like he was a god, right? Because it was like he was the arbiter of what was right and wrong and what was important, and what they thought was important was starting a race war because that was gonna fix something or something. I don't know.
Yes. Okay. Do we have the slides? I wanted to get to the next one. Let's see. I'm still okay. Here we go. I'm still learning how to. Okay, here we go. So, and Brent Lee, you mentioned this whole thing of us versus them. I think that's a good way we can check ourselves. Is to anytime we're saying, well, them, and then, well, they do this and I do that, like, okay, I'm othering them, and that could be dangerous. So just, it's a good way to measure our own biases. But I think cults are really good at doing that. And even in the subtlest ways, like I remember when I was Christian, I would participate in trick-or-treating and Halloween. And I remember one of my friends asking me, oh, do you celebrate Halloween? I'm like, yeah, I go trick-or-treating. And she's like, oh, so you're a Catholic then? And I'm like, no. And it's because they had taught her, oh, well, if you trick or treat, you must be a Catholic. And it's like this lumping people into these categories. But then that makes it so much easier to be like, well, we're better than them, and we need to be loyal to our group and do what our group is doing because we don't want to be like them. And it's so easy to fall into that control once you do that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times they'll even say, I mean, in religious circles and like hardcore fundamentalists, they'll literally say that people that aren't in our in-group are controlled by the devil. Like they're blinded by invisible, undetectable monsters. And that's why they're not in our group. And which is just like, wow, dude, if you have to think everybody outside your thing is like being mind controlled by a monster or whatever, like you have to like start to recognize that there's something going on here, right? But they don't
Being manipulated.
Right. Yeah.
Demonize these other people that are just human like you.
Right. Literally demonize. Yeah, exactly. Jeez. It's crazy.
Yeah, the first time I came across that speak was on YouTube, listening to people on YouTube. And I didn't think they were serious, that they actually thought there was devils and there was demons that were controlling people. I thought it was more of a metaphor of trying to explain things. And then I realized, and speaking to Christians on the internet, that they actually do believe that there is a physical devil. There is actual demons over there. You're being possessed by a demon, and that's why you don't follow our religion. And yeah, it's a scary thing that people actually believe that there's devils and demons that are controlling us. Yeah. But I suppose that's what a devil or a demon would say if he's being controlled, though, wouldn't he?
And I find it so ironic that like your mission is to spread the good news and to convert these people. Like that's your life's goal, and that's what God wants you to do. But the second somebody believes something else, like you don't have any compassion to them, you want to cut them off and be like, you're demonized. I don't want to be around you. I'll pray for you, but I won't talk to you or discuss things critically with you or hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that's probably later on, once they realise that they're not going to convert yet. I don't think they're like that to start with. To start with, they've got the answer. They can fix you. They can identify the problem. They know what the problem is, and they've got the solution to that problem. And that solution is to join that cult. Once they realise they aren't going to get you, or if somebody was to leave a cult, I suppose then there would be the way that you've just described towards these people.
Well, it's the fear of like them influencing you, right? Like, because like I was homeschooled, right? So I was not allowed to talk to anybody that was not in my very specific in group, which is my parents' fundamentalist thing. Not allowed to talk to anybody. So, and I remember I made friends with kids or whatever, and just in the neighborhood and stuff, and my parents like ended up having me like, you can't be friends with them anymore because they were starting to like maybe make me question things a little bit, and like, why do you have to go to church every single day, and stuff like that. Like, it's a valid question, I'd say. But that was that. They didn't want to like, no, what you're doing is normal. They're the weirdos. Okay. They're the ones that aren't going to church every day. They're the weird ones, man. You need to be over here. Come back. So yeah, it's like they don't want you to be influenced at all by any kind of outsiders,
Definitely. And now we know it's being on the outside. It's a tool for manipulation. And that brings us to the last point, that cults tend to shut down critical thinking. And that's part of the whole cognitive dissonance process, as they're sharing information that supports their belief and don't want you to have anything else to derail you from that. And to the point where these people believe so much that they stick to their beliefs over reality, over what they can see. That's how much they're taught to stick to their belief, and that they can't express any doubt. I remember the whole reason why I even came to deconvert is because in my 40s is the first time I'm like, okay, God, I know you're going to know my thoughts and my heart. I know I'm going to doubt you, but please let me just try it. I'm just going to see, just to question. I took so long to get to that point. How stupid is that?
It's scary. Like you almost feel afraid to ask questions, It's like it gets so deep in there that it makes you feel guilt for even just going, but I don't know if this is true. And they're like, how dare you're acting like a god again, questioning stuff right? And then you gotta be like, oh, I'm
Mhm.
so sorry. I shouldn't ask that question. That was evil. That was
But again, to be fair, that happens in a lot of religions that we probably wouldn't even class as a cult. Religion doesn't like to be questioned. It doesn't like its members to ask questions, especially if you're asking difficult questions to people. That's when they'll say, basically, you shouldn't question God. You should just believe in God. You obviously don't have enough faith, because faith is a virtue. Be able to believe these things without questioning it is higher than questioning it, which makes no sense at all.
no. Yeah, it's wild.
Speaking of which, let's get into some of these examples of online cults that have been really highlighted in on Netflix, on HBO, on some of these platforms. So here's a perfect example of, it's not a religion, but it's a cult, and let's kind of explore what makes it a cult. So have y'all heard of Escaping Twin Flames?
Oh yeah, that
No,
was wild.
no,
Oh,
I've
sorry,
not.
go ahead.
Did you see the Netflix
Yeah, that was wild.
series?
I was just, oh my God. This one really had me stumped. Like I was just kind of hitting my head going like, why are people listening to the, like, why are they doing that? I couldn't figure out why they would listen to them, but I don't know. It was just so strange, but I guess it's like all that, like the conditioning and everything.
Exactly,
It's just like,
yes.
wow, this is so weird.
So, Paul, just to give you the summary, there's this couple, Shalaya, which is a made up name, and her husband, and they self-proclaim to be able to tell people who their soulmate is, and that which they call twin flames. So who wouldn't want to know? Like, everybody spends all this money trying to find their true mate, right? Go online dating, go on dates, you meet all these people just to try to find your soulmate. Well, these people can magically tell you who your soulmate is. Oh, and by the way, most of them are within their organization. So you got to be a part of the
Right.
organization. And no, your soulmate just happens to be here. So now you'll stick to the group together and we'll help you guys. And, but with time, I kind of will share some tidbits. With time, there were more women in the group. So then they were saying, oh, you thought you were straight, but you're not. You're mistaken. You're actually lesbian. So that they could put some of these women together, to the point where one of the women, I mean, I think several people were convinced that they were not women and they had surgery, or that sex, and they had surgery to change their sex, their gender affirming surgery and all of this. And even their family members were like, wait, are you this other gender? And they were kind of like, I don't know, like they told me that I am, like, to that
Wow.
point.
Wow. Yeah.
That's deep level brainwashing, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And
And
they would
it's
have them
all
harass
online.
people too. Like that was the thing. They would also have them like chasing people around. Like you know, they would end up getting restraining orders and stuff because they were like, "No,
Yeah,
that's
because
your twin flame. Just keep
because
going."
that's what I was going to ask. What if I tell you that your ideal person is somebody who lives in the next town, but that person in the next town isn't a member of this organization, and now you're literally stalking them and trying to say to them, look, I've got this from high authority. Me and you are supposed to be together. I mean, you're going to freak people out, aren't you? It's
Oh yeah.
literally,
Like really freaked out. Yeah,
that is
wild.
madness.
Totally. So this is a perfect example of charismatic leaders who are promising some, they're being attributed for this supernatural um powers, I guess you could say. And now they get to set the standard. They get to decide for you. And so you can see all the elements. But the crazy thing is this is completely online. So people could at any moment turn off their computer, but they're so drawn in and so connected to the other people in the group that they feel this sense of responsibility to dedicate more time and more money. Oh, and by the way, Paul, they show her with like all these designer bags and clothing and then building a compound. So the people are sending money as they're getting rich off of these lies. And that's part of the misinformation part that we also mentioned as an aspect of the cults.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
think the
suppose
sunk
any
cost.
cult that starts, there's got to be a reason behind cults, and I would say that most time it's probably to do with money.
Yeah.
If you can get a cult going and get people to follow you, and the next step surely is going to be getting the money in. But I'm just going to ask, so does this end up being like a bit of a sex cult? Because it seems that's the way it's going when it's trying to pair people off with who they think is their ideal partner. So would this be categorized as a bit of a sex cult, or?
Well, Brent Lee, remind me what happened, because I remember there was something about how then she couldn't have a baby. Like, then she miscarried, and this baby was going to be like this divine being, and she miscarried. So that kind of, there's a kink in things, right? And they're what they were saying. Well, then he was saying, well, God told me I could have these other women. And then it was like, then only grew into a sex cult for him, not for the other people to have multiple partners.
And she fell for it.
Right. Yeah. I think that was, okay. It's been a minute since I watched it. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, I forgot about that whole thing with the the chosen one baby. That's so wild. Yeah, I mainly remember them like telling people to harass people, and just and they just kept on going back to them, like, but they did a restraining order, and they're like, that doesn't matter, keep going.
If you really love them,
yeah, and they kept on trying to harass. It was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been on the stream for a month because I've been locked up.
Some of them got locked up. Yeah, literally, right. For harassing these people.
But the crazy thing is that I think this organization's still going on strong. Like, nothing happens. There's no kind of accountability legally because these people are choosing to do this, and it's just. Yeah. But are they really choosing if they're being psychologically influenced that heavily? It's a gray area.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose a cult, until it gets into the realms of causing harm, what can people do if people are, like you say, volunteering to take part in these cults, and they're not getting hurt and they're not potentially hurting anybody else, but apart from influencing people to join these cults, what can authorities do about it, really?
I don't know. That's a good question.
The only thing, and I learned this from watching this next one, so I'll tell you a little bit about this one. But to answer your question, really the only thing they can do is get the person on a crime. So if they can kind of prove some kind of financial crime is being committed, or some kind of sexual crime in some cases being committed, that's the angle they can choose. But like in the case of Scientology, they have so many attorneys, and you sign a contract of, what is it, $1 billion contract to be a part of the organization. Like, they really cover their bases. So sometimes it could be hard legally from a legal standpoint.
Yeah.
So have you guys heard about this other cult, Dancing for the Devil?
No, I probably won't have heard of any of these. I don't have TikTok, so...
I feel like I did just watch. I watched so many of these that I'm gonna be honest. I do remember watching something about 7M, but I'd have to refresh my memory.
Sure, I'll give you a summary. It's so sad because, see, these two girls here are sisters, and they started young in TikTok, and they would do these dances. They were really known for dancing. And they grew together, and they just had such a beautiful relationship, and you could tell they were best friends, and both into the same thing. So they had a really beautiful relationship. Well, then they meet this I think he's a Korean pastor who's also the parent of one of the other TikTok dancers. So he's kind of recruiting through his friends, the dancing friends, and he's a pastor, and he's letting them stay at the house, and, hey, you guys can create content together. And then they start growing their followers and their income, and they sort of start mingling everything. So he's not only the Korean guy's not only their pastor, but he's also a manager for their dancing career. And so he's letting them stay at their place, which is like his compound, and they can create content with other people. So he's recruiting, they're growing. So in their mind, they have financial benefit and career benefit from joining. And so they're attributing it to this man, godly man, ever since I joined here, he's been blessing my finances. But to the point where he was taking 70% of their income in some cases, because he was taking tithes, he was taking rent, he was taking man of God tithes,
Tax there.
management fees, everything. And these dancers are making a lot of money. These influencers make so much money, but he's getting most of it. And they're just so into the church and the cult, and this leader's teaching them that basically if their families don't come, something, I don't remember the details, but basically their families, they othered them to the point where now they're disconnected from their family. So now this girl's not talking to her sister. They're completely heartbroken. She's cut them out of their lives. And so
I remember that. Yeah, it's the families trying to get her, right? They're trying to get
yes.
her back, and they can't. Yeah, okay, I do remember this. I do remember this. Yeah, that was so sad. I felt
And
so
what
bad
can they
for
do?
them.
They're choosing to be there. And some of the other girls that were part of the group, I think, were being sexually molested by this leader.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he was kind of saying, this is our body. God gave us these bodies. We're meant to touch each other. He changes the rules.
Right. Yep. Gets them to, get rid of their agency, get rid of those boundaries that they have. That's a big deal too. Just getting rid of all boundaries, right? They just walk all over the boundaries. Yeah.
Exactly. And to the point where after this show aired, I mean, the family still hasn't they've reconnected, but they're not a relationship. They just reconnected for show.
Yeah.
But then she's still distant from her family.
That's so sad. Yeah.
So, Paul, in answer to your question, Dr. Lalich does talk about how to possibly address somebody who's tied up and brainwashed in a cult. And there really wasn't that much of a formula other than try not to challenge them or reason with them, because that's just going to push them further away. To keep reminding them of the good times and build rapport and connection, and just take your time, just be there as somebody that they can talk to, because they're going to have doubts, even though they can't say them out loud and they're not allowed to question. With time, they may talk to you. And her last tip was just never give up. It's never too late. Just keep on. Don't cut that person out of your life. Just keep trying to have connection with them.
That's so sad.
The one I'm surprised with is they don't challenge them. I would probably say, don't challenge them aggressively, but have conversations with them. And if they start getting upset about it, back off. But I would try and plant seeds in people's mind to try to change their mind, rather than trying to be going there as a debate or to go in there and actually argue with them. I would try and plant little seeds of doubt.
Right. Yeah, it's like ask questions kind of thing.
Yeah, ask questions about what they believe. Show interest in what they believe and get them to answer the questions that you have, and then possibly question the answers that they're giving you, which may cause them to think.
Right, but you don't want to go, like you were just saying, you don't want to do too much, because you don't want them to shut down, and they can shut down real quick if they feel like you're getting to a place where you're starting to challenge what they think. I was wondering
especially
too,
when they're taught people who challenge you are of the bad side.
They're the bad baddies. Yeah, that's it is weird too how doesn't it seem like the flat earth thing, doesn't that seem like it's a cult a little bit? Is that like a godless cult? Although I actually.
Paul's the expert in the flat earth.
Well, I wouldn't call myself an expert. I've dealt with flat earthers.
Or has a lot of experience, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of them are Christians. I've never come across an atheist that believes in the flat earth. They all have a Christian belief. I suppose one of the main things that's going to draw them away of coming under the full category of a cult is they don't have a particular leader. But I suppose there is some people that are on YouTube that are quite well known in that group, and they've got their own little group. So I suppose you could split the flat earth groups into several little groups that are cultish. So yeah, but they certainly fulfill a lot of the category of a cult, they are told what to think. They do not like questioning inside. And if you ever watch any debates with flat earthers where you've got two flat earthers talking, if one of them starts to disagree with the other one, it gets really violent, as in the way they speak to each other very, very quickly.
Really?
Oh, yes. Yeah. The guy
They don't really have a
called,
way to prove anything, though, do they? So they kind of have to just.
they don't have anything to prove, does they? They can't prove it. Honestly, when I first came across Flat Earth, I thought it was a joke. I thought this cannot be serious. And I ended up speaking to somebody and then realised he was a flat earther and he was absolutely deadly serious. There's absolutely deadly serious about it. Now, I think that a lot of the people that are making money on YouTube, or that were making money on YouTube and getting people to send like super chats and things like that, I think some of them actually know. I think they're grifters. They're there to try and get these people to join their group, and send them money. I'm absolutely sure that a lot of the most well-known flat earthers do not believe it's flat. Yeah, they're in it for what they can get out of it.
Do you know the connection between Christianity and flat Earth ideas?
Well, they do claim that if you read certain passages in the Bible which describes the shape of the earth, it describes it as a flat disc. Is it Jesus or somebody who's taken up to the top of the mountain where you can see the four corners of the earth? Well, of course, you can't see four corners of the earth if it's a globe. Right, you know, right. Things like that. The earth is motionless and sits on pillars. Right. That's another thing that's in the Bible. It's covered by a firmament, and the firmament's there to separate the waters from above from the waters beneath, so that they believe that we're like a snow globe, right, sat inside a body of water, and then there's windows in the firmament to let the rain through. It's just so yeah, they use all that as a way to explain why the Earth's flat.
That's so weird. They open a window and they're like, "Damn, it's raining," because they opened the window.
Well, yeah, I mean that's what's in the Bible, isn't it? That the firmament separates the waters from the above from the waters below.
Ah, that's so interesting. Jeez.
So they have to keep believing that so that the Bible won't be wrong, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if I don't think that's the thing that gets them started. I think that sort of enforces the belief that they may be right. Most flat earthers would describe themselves as critical thinkers, and that's why they believe they do seriously categorize themselves as critical thinkers. Us that believe it's a globe, we're not thinking critically. We're just accepting what has been told to us from being children, that's written in textbooks and what our teachers have told us.
Mm-hmm. They call themselves globe skeptics. I'm like, shut up. Are you kidding me? Like, you don't use that word. Come on.
Yeah, and they call us indoctrinated because we believe what we were taught in school. So we were indoctrinated.
Yeah. And that's exactly what they think. They think we're indoctrinated because we were told that your first day in the classroom, if you look round, there'll be a globe somewhere, and that's there to influence. When you look at movies, a lot of it has to do with space. That's there to influence you. You know, you've got the globe with the thing going around. What I can't remember what the thing's called, but things like that. Cartoons that shows globes. Right. So they think that we've been brainwashed. Since childhood.
Yeah, we're the brainwashed ones.
We're the brainwashed ones, and they're the one that have managed to find the truth.
Yeah,
it's crazy. But I mean, flat Earth, it's growing. It is still a very small amount of people that believe in, but it is a growing group. And
it is. I have one in my family. I would have never thought, like, someone that close to me.
Well, it's because of the internet, and it's because of social media, YouTube, and things like that. That people are they're so willing to believe in unsaturated claims. If they're watching it on a video on YouTube, or there's a really good website, and it's showing all this, people are just so easily. I think they'll fall for this absolute garbage. And when I'm talking about these people, I don't mean people, I mean fucking idiots, because that's being polite. That's exactly what they are. They're absolutely crazy.
But what I was gonna say is that I feel like when I was growing up and I thought about somebody brainwashed, you almost think of like zombie, yes, sir, I will. But that's not what it looks like in reality. Like it is easy to get brainwashed. Like now that I am not a Christian anymore, I consider myself critical, intelligent person, but yet I was believing those things. And it just has to do with people setting the groundwork for this is how things are, that's what you're building things on for you to have a false sense of reality. And it's just wild how easily it could happen, how we could fall prey to it.
And yeah, and you can be intelligent. I've seen like the really people, like intelligent people. It's more about valuing our ability to figure out what is true and going through all of the, all the stuff that nobody likes having to go through all this stuff to figure out what's true. It's a lot of doubting yourself, a lot of going, I don't know if that's true. Let's figure it out. Let's just weigh the evidence and stuff like that. And it's just, I can understand why people wouldn't want to go through all that and just be like, can I just find somebody that can tell me like what to think about stuff? Because this is taxing, you know what I mean? So I can see how.
The thing is, I can tell you why you should think it's a globe.
Right.
And that's because some people went up in a rocket, looked out the window, saw it, and took a bloody photo of it. That's why we know it's a globe.
That was a bulb. It was like the bulb, what is it called? The round frame.
We've got an history of people circumnavigating the globe going back hundreds of years. We've got maps. It's just absolutely crazy. It boggles my mind, but I do like getting into debates and conversation with flat earthers because I'm trying to understand how you get to that stage. It baffles me. And I enjoy a good argument, so I do it for that as well.
Same,
Right.
but I think that's important to have these conversations because I feel like that's what got me out of it. Just someone asking you a question. Okay, well, what about this? And you're like, oh, that doesn't make sense. Okay.
Right.
So I think to Dr. Lalich's point, we should never give up, keep trying, keep getting the word out there because we have to fight against the movement who's saying these wrong things too.
Right. And promote like looking for truth just in general, right? Like that should just be that's what thing that we promote, right?
Doing.
Oh, I know.
That's what flat earthers are doing.
Right. Oh God, that's true.
Yeah. Challenge everything. Whatever you've been taught, the flat earthers basically say you challenge everything.
Yeah.
So you've got to literally start from a blank sheet and start all over again. Somebody needs to go out there and discover again that the earth is a globe.
Yes. One thing I notice is that these cults are often trying to appeal to hope, like in the case of twin flames, like nobody can tell you who your soulmate is. So that's what they're going to say. Oh, we can do that. We can, or like, for example, in churches that they offer, marriage counseling or parenting classes or whatever, they're acting like they have the solution to having a wonderful marriage, a well-behaved children, all these things that you can't promise people. And people want hope. So they're buying into these things and trusting in these other people. So I think this other cult, which has been featured. Have y'all guys seen this one? Love Has Won, the cult of Mother God.
The one with the dead lady,
yeah,
where she was dead for like, oh God, yeah, that was so gross. I was like, this is so unsanitary. They're just walking around with the dead. Anyway, you go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So
no, I haven't. So you're gonna have to explain that one to me. That sounds shocking.
So speaking to appealing to hope. So this is God. She's a female. Right. And when she's she gets this following, which she starts online and people start moving to her compound and start serving her what she wants and all of that. And whenever she gets cranky and rude, well, that's because she's carrying the weight of everybody's sins on her shoulders. And so you should understand and just do what she's telling you to do. What else, Brent Lee, do you remember about this cult?
As far as the cult, that was basically it, right? Like they thought that she was Mother God, like you couldn't question her, anything like that. She was never wrong, and she was very drunk all the time, right? That's what I feel like. And that was what was like causing a lot of her agitation, right? And they were also against medical help, right? They were like against any kind of like going to hospitals and stuff,
So I
right?
think part of how they made their money is they were selling this, I think it was colloidal silver. Am
Oh,
I
the blues.
pronouncing that
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's it. Colloidal silver. Mhm.
To where she would drink it and it would, supposedly do something miraculous to her or whatever. But she's promoting this silver. Everybody should be drinking it. Well, she drinks it to the point where she gets silver poisoning and she turns blue and silver and to the point where she died and I think she was like still kind of alive, but like still so poisoned and so blue, almost like preserved. But then she had died, and they still didn't do anything with her body because she's God. What do they do without her? She's their leader.
They were lost, yeah, without her. It's like they didn't know how to function. It's just wow.
I think it's still going on. Like the members still
What
put
really?
on internet streaming and promoting her ideas. Oh, they were writing down everything she would say. Remember that?
That's
Every
right.
word she would say, they would
Oh,
write it
that's
down.
right. And it was all like nonsense. It was just like,
So the leader has died and the cult's still going. So have they like appointed another leader, or
I don't know. I haven't followed up. I
no,
just briefly saw that it was still going, but I don't know what's
because
become of it.
right, yeah, because there was some like somebody stole a bunch of money and stuff. I don't know. There was a bunch of other like drama going on there as well. But yeah, that's so interesting. I didn't realize it was still going like that. It's just interesting to me how it seems like humans in general, like I think a lot of times what gets humans is like we make bad choices in life and we have like the subsequent result of our bad choices. So a lot of times we're like, I gotta stop making choices, right? Like my choices keep messing me up. Is there somebody that can help me make my choices because I'm not good at it. Right. And so I think religion utilizes that, but in this one specifically, I feel like a lot of that's where they would go to her, because they felt lost with, the choices they had made leading them to problems and everything. And it's just like something about people just wanting to give up their agency so that they can feel like it's not their fault anymore. Like, well, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. That's what they said to do. That's not on me. Okay. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing according to the thing that I've decided is what I'm going to live according to. Right. And there's something, I don't know, that draws us to that. And I think it's just a lot of, like I was saying, like saving mental energy and stuff. Like it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of trying to figure things out, and a lot of just acknowledging the fact that the life is chaotic and you can do everything right and still have bad things happen. Right. And people don't handle that well,
Well said. And thinking back to our brain and how it works, I almost think we're hardwired that way in the sense that, as a kid, you look to your parents to make those decisions and to help protect you and guide you and all of that. And so you want that.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's also a group, isn't it? It's like a group mentality as well. If you're somebody who probably doesn't have many friends or fit in so much, if you don't enjoy this group, you're going to feel more at home in that group than you are out in the normal environment, I suppose. That sense of belonging.
That too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I suppose is what they use to coerce people into these cults is to give them a sense of belonging. And if people haven't experienced this sense of belonging that they want, and then suddenly this group is offering them this, it's going to be very tempting for them.
Right.
That's such a good point because when I was learning about the different parts of the brain, the biggest thing they were saying, like you can't just change somebody's opinion or get them to buy what you're selling just by here are the reasons, like just logical reasoning. You're never going to get anywhere. They said you have to connect first and then people are willing to receive the message of what you're saying. So that's part of engaging the different parts of the brain. So just to your point, like just feeling that connection with other people. And the crazy thing is I have a cousin who's in a cult online. Her church is online. The pastor's like in Florida and she's like in Texas.
Of course she is.
And she literally will turn down date nights, family nights, outings with her friends because she's got church service online. And
Wow.
it's like she feels connected to these people in her online community. So she's choosing them over her real world community. But it's just like, which, I mean, if it's healthy, that's fine. It's great. But the point is that you just having that connection can be what opens the door for you to be in a cult.
Right. Huh.
Hmm.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say with the different parts of the brain, like you were talking about. It's real quick. I used to drink a lot and like almost every day, and I struggled with it for a long time, and I had the hardest time stopping. And one of the way that I ended up quitting was by listening to a book that kind of just did that. It almost like brainwashed me into not wanting to drink. I mean, it brainwashed me out. I was brainwashed by the alcohol. That's kind of the way they put it. And they're like, we're brainwashing you back out of the thing that you've been brainwashed into by the alcohol kind of thing. But it was just interesting because it utilized, and I had to keep listening to it. It's like the repetition really did help. And it just,
I mean, brainwashing isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like in your instance, it can be a positive thing. It depends on what they're being brainwashed to.
Right. Yeah. It's fascinating.
Misinformation versus true information.
Exactly.
And going back to your brain, so whenever you have a connection, the more times you have that thought. So to your point, Brent, like having to go to church every single day, you're repeating that thought, that connection, then it gets more myelinated in your brain. So it's like literally hardwired in your brain. And going back to like addiction, let's say, if you were to be like, don't drink, that's not going to help you because you're still thinking about drinking and you're still going over that connection. So you almost have to create a new connection and have it be myelinated over the repetition for you to change that behavior or that thought process. So it's difficult to change somebody's mind. You have to do it over and over and over and over and over again and do a different connection.
And it kind of, to that point, like it kind of utilized that same like us and them kind of thing, where it was just like everybody else is crazy drinking poison and acting like it's normal. Like it went into like a whole kind of like matrixy kind of thing, but it worked. I don't know. And then a lot of it's kind of true. Drinking poison is kind of weird, right? But yeah. And so I don't know. It's just interesting how they, it walks you back out of it. But yeah, you're right.
That's a good point.
You're right. But it was like a subconscious thing because your subconscious is what kind of guides your decision making. It seems anyway to me, and so it kind of gets it down deep in there so that you don't choose that without realizing it. Because a lot of it's just making choices without realizing. And I think a lot of this does the same thing, right? A lot of these cults and stuff, like you're just making choices, not necessarily based on like decision, like actually weighing the decisions and stuff like that. It's just impulsive, right? Because they've kind of programmed you,
Yeah. So good.
I was just wondering, is there something that people could look at if they suspect they're getting into a cult? What would be a red flag? Because like we've just discussed, you don't enter a cult and you're suddenly thrown in the deep end. It starts very slowly. You first become a member of a group, they make you feel welcome in the group, and then you get certain promises from the group that you're going to have a better social life or whatever it's going to be. Is there something that we could possibly say is once we get to this point, that's a red flag, it's now becoming a cult? Would it be something like once you start getting influenced to stay away from friends, told to forget friends, or to start drifting away from family? Would that, obviously that would be a red flag, but would that be something that would happen later on, or would that be something that could probably start at the beginning? I'm just wondering if anybody who's listening and they suspect they might be in a cult, what would be the litmus paper to test whether you are?
That's a good question. Yeah.
There is somebody, and I wish there's somebody who has created a criteria, like ways to know if you're in a cult. And I think it has to do with the acronym BOIL, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe
the BITE model?
Is it BITE? I know it was, BITE model. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah,
see
I feel
if I
like I
can
remember
pull
that.
it up. But it
Can't
seems
remember
like
the guy's name.
isolation would definitely be part of that.
Yes, I think that's the second one. Isolation.
Yeah, would that be isolation from like your family, your friends, and you become in the group?
Yeah.
You're not isolated, but outside of it, you're isolated from outside of the group, aren't you?
Right. Yeah.
So I'm reading over what BITE stands for, and it's behavior, information, thought, and emotion.
Oh, okay.
So that's tying it all together, right? Like the different parts of the brain. And we talked about misinformation versus your social compass being changed, and invoking the emotion. It kind of mentions love bombing, guilt, fear.
Huh.
So that's a good fight model. I like that.
That's fascinating. Yeah, the love bombing too, like making people feel like, like, oh, okay, finally, I'm loved here. I belong here, kind of thing.
Exactly. They get me.
Right. Yeah, they get me.
They're going to make you, like say, love bombing. They make you feel welcome, like say, part of the group. And then later on, one of the fears they could use against you is that becoming not part of that group anymore. Basically, them turning their back on you, and that's just going to keep you in the group even longer. You're never going to leave the group once you get to that stage, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, and that's like at the heart of somebody's soul. Like their community is so important to them, and the people who love them is so important to them. So they're losing that by having a different opinion about something. Now that's a big thing that's at stake when they decide to leave a lie behind.
Right.
Yeah, and once you get to that stage, in any situation like that, even in a relationship, once you get to that stage, that's when it's open to abuse, isn't it? And the way you're being treated. And once they've got you to that stage, that's when they've really got you into the cult.
Well,
manipulation.
Yeah. Specifically, like with the abuse, it's like a lot of the conditioning, I think, has to do with getting yourself okay with being abused. Like they break that down. So they're like, no, this isn't abuse. This is just what we do here. This is just part of the whatever,
You're not a slave, you're a servant.
Right. Yeah.
Of somebody wonderful.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't you want to serve him?
Suffering is good when it's for the cult leader guy, that's actually good.
Pride is bad, autonomy bad. Right.
Yeah. Jeez. Yeah, so sad.
Yeah. I'm going to say one thing that's kind of crazy when you think about it. Once you learn about how to engage all the different parts of your brain and how to influence, we can see how that influence can be abused in many ways, not only through cults, but even like the legal system, attorneys trying to convince a jury or even a police implementing these tactics to get somebody to confess to a crime they didn't commit. They're separating them from their family. They're threatening things that happen. Well, that didn't happen like that. Well, I think you did this, and I think this happened. And they're planting this false reality. So it's amazing when you see these tactics being applied to so many aspects of our lives.
Right.
Politics. We definitely see this in politics.
Yeah, I was going to say that's like probably the biggest in-group, out-groupism that we got going on. It's like definitely very effective. Yeah, it's crazy. They've made it a science at this point, right? Get you afraid of people, get you hateful to people, and be like, stay away from them. Come over here and send us money so that we can always try to keep those evil people at bay. And make laws to keep them at bay and all that stuff.
I'll never forget like my biggest walk of shame I've ever had, which I shouldn't have had, is when I went to vote. Like we all say voting's anonymous, just vote. But then you have the Republican line and you have the Democrat line. And in my area, the Republican line was like wrapped around the building, and I was waiting in that line thinking everyone's waiting in line to vote. And they're like, oh no, the Democrat line's empty. You go over there. And I had to walk through the crowd of people and them all looking at me, knowing that I'm going to the Democrat line. And I had to be like, grabbing my kids and like, don't memorize my face and attack me later on. That's what it felt like. It felt like,
That's so sad. Yeah.
yeah.
It's like, jeez. Right. Wow.
Yeah, that's crazy. That I didn't realize you had to go into your specific line that you're going to vote for. We just turn up at the local community centre or whatever it is. You go into a booth. There's things there. You put your cross on the paper, put it in the envelope, drop it in. Nobody knows what you've voted at all.
That's
the
how
next
it
person
should
that
be.
walks in behind me could be voting for a completely different person to what I did.
Because I think like each area has like different rules or whatever, but like where I am, the rules are that you can't even wear like clothes that signal who you're voting for or anything. Like,
Right.
and, like if it just has like a I'm against abortion or something like that, you can do that. But if you can't like wear people's names and stuff like that, like other politicians and shit, like you can't influence. In other words,
But then they'll put you in a group in a line.
Right. Oh, no, where I was, I did it like you said, like it was just on the paper and
really?
nobody knows. Yeah, that was my that's how we did it. But I think it's different, like I said, for different states. We all can make up their own rules, I guess.
Yeah, and there's so many little words and propaganda that us and others, everybody, like even the word woke, like I feel like that's associated with a specific party and movement and idea. And it's this word that seems like it'd be a good thing. Like who doesn't want to be awake and like see things? But it's like this bad word. That's another way that they kind of move the script or move the ideas of good and bad.
Yeah. Yeah, they vilify it and make it seem like it's silly. Advocating for your rights is ridiculous. You should just don't ever worry about your own rights or anything like that. You know, just you don't need rights. People don't need rights. That's fine. Don't worry about it. Just be quiet and do what you're told. And,
you care, you snowflake.
Yeah, caring about people. Get out of here. Freaking weirdo.
All right. Well, I think now's a good time to thank our patrons, Global Atheists. Go ahead, Brent Lee.
Oh, thank you so much, patrons, for let's see who we got. We got Helen Green, or Hell's Bells, right? Logan Fisher. We got Amanda McLeod. We got Eric Ozols. We got Rion. Wow, that's a cool way to spell that. Deneen Murphy, Dan D, Michael Wiseman, Sonny Shell, Aaron Coalson, and Phil Calderone. So yeah, thank you all so much. This is awesome. We really appreciate your support, because we wouldn't have the lights on. This blue light, it would not work if it weren't for the people that are down below. So we really appreciate everything that you do for us.
Definitely. And don't forget the other shows we have besides Global Atheists, Women Atheists Unload, and Let's Talk on Sunday. Is that the name of the group, or maybe they're talking on Sunday? I don't know. But I'll mention some of the other shows on Skeptic Haven are Tuesdays, Secular Soapbox, Thursdays with the Sunny Spot, and Saturday, the Global Atheist group. Oh, I guess the Women of Atheists Unload are on Sundays. So there are many different ways to check out many different conversations related to atheism.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this was fun, guys. Good getting to connect and know you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Time for final thoughts.
In summation, cults are bad. You don't want to be a part of that. You should think for yourself.
Yes, exactly.
Is that where we're going?
And from this, I would say that one of the main ways you're going to find out is if you're in a cult is if you're getting influenced or getting pressured to move away from your family, and if you start losing friends, that would be the biggest red flag for me, that you're definitely in a cult.
Yeah, and trying to get you to stop thinking critically, and that's probably going to be the first thing they're going to do, is try to do the thought stoppers, right? That's what I call it.
Keep talking about critical thinking like that, and you're going to start your own flat Earth group. I can tell.
That's cynical. I know it sounds similar, but it's different word. But
Yeah, I think if you have the truth, you shouldn't need to stand on manipulative tactics. The truth stands for itself, the evidence speaks for itself. So anytime you're needing to do any kind of isolation or um, guilt shaming, any of that, that's all tactics. And you have to ask yourself, why are they having to do that? I think that'll help be a red flag for any kind of bad behavior. And I think it's always good to challenge our biases and seek information through evidence.
Yes, always be open-minded, always question, but don't be that open-minded that your brain falls out.
I like that. I never heard that. That's good.
I like that. Oh yeah.
Thanks again, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, thanks everybody.
Oh, we gotta plug our stuff. Apostate and tell us about your show. What show do you got?
Yeah, you can check me and my husband out. My husband is a former pastor and has a seminary degree turned atheist Bible scholar. So we explore and challenge the ideas in the Bible on Apostate of Mine on YouTube.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. What about you, Paul? What you got going on?
Well, my channel is literally my name, Paul Camish. I've got a few flat earth debates on there, a few atheist debates, some flying stuff. Because when I started the channel, it was just there for me to put videos on so I wouldn't lose them when they weren't clogging up my phone or whatever. So that was how my channel started. But there's some flat earth debate things on there and religious things and things like this. So if I'm sure it's fine for me to do this. Once this has gone out, then I will link it to my channel to try and grow my channel like that. Because I seem to spend more time in other people's streams rather than my own because I've only got a small following. I'd be sat talking to myself most of the time. So if I can come into streams like this, at least I've got a bit of an audience for people to talk to.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I feel you. And I do it's a YouTube show called The Punk Apostate, where I just react like Mystery Science Theater style to fundies and interact with the audience and make a lot of jokes and goof off. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, Punk Apostate on YouTube. But that's it.
I'm a new subscriber.
Hey, thank you. Oh yeah. So hey, thank you all so much for hanging out and watching. This was a lot of fun. And yeah, definitely look forward to next time.
Until next time.